I went to a sperm bank recently. Look, I'm 37 years old, single, and I can't quite predict the future. So, who's to say if I'll ever be a father? So I thought, if I can't make anyone pregnant the, usual normal way, then I'll go wank in the bank, and maybe some lonely lady will scrutinize over my semen. Maybe a whole gaggle of women will fight for the right to pump my jizz up their floof, for us to have an offspring, across time and space. To my future children, welcome to the treasure hunt. Ha! You want to know your father, do you? Well, strap in, because Daddy's about to shed all sorts of dirt. Yeah, Papa discharged fluids in a beaker, and then your mum aspired you in a pipette and shoved you up her puss. The circle of life. Make sure it's a sperm bank, because I went to Barclays and they swiftly kicked me out for indecent exposure. Indecent? How dare you? What do you mean? Just look at this beautiful penis! I didn't do that, of course. My appointment was at 3 p.m. I got there at 2:45. I came early, classic. And I sat in their cold, sterile room trying to, drown my dolphin, but their porn was terrible. Like, there was a moment when the camera panned to some guy on a sofa playing the guitar for the background music, and I just thought, go back to the lesbians! Like, who directed this? So I tried to connect to my internet, but I was in a corner of some basement, so the porn website that has all my saved playlists and chocolate cake recipes wouldn't load, so I mostly masturbated to my phone's signal strength indicator, just trying to get some 5G. I finally ejaculated, what a hero, and it was delayed by my recent intake of antidepressants, because I've hardly cried since taking the medicine, which is good, but it's also been hard to get hard. Anyway, that's too much detail. I dropped my cup of cum in a dumbwaiter down to the lab. A sentence I never thought I'd say. I dropped my cup of cum in a dumbwaiter down to the lab. And down there, I assume there's some unfortunate med student to test my spunk. Hopefully they have all the appropriate equipment, like a microscope and, I don't know, tweezers for my sperm count. 1, 2, 3. That's it. 3 sperms in a cup full to the brim. Low sperm count, but loads of liquid. Gross. Sorry, that was so gross. It was actually the opposite. Just a sneeze full of spooge in a shot glass. Gross. A shot glass. Hopefully that's not how they test a sperm. Someone sips it. A sensory evaluator has a little taste, like wine testers. They swill it in their mouth, gargle it. This is a 2024 ejaculate. Hints of pineapple and blueberries, but also notes of coffee and cigarettes. So gross. If they do it like proper sommeliers, then they will spit it out, but if it's a bachelorette party down there, then they'll hopefully swallow. You naughty ladies. Ladies, you're so naughty. So I returned to the receptionist, and it was more difficult to look her in the eyes this time, because she knew that I just bashed the bishop next door. That's a weird sensation. Central London is a weird place, man, because pedestrians might just have come a minute ago and now they just march on to a local Pret-a-Manger. And so I had a little coffee, and then I don't know if it was a coincidence, but within an hour I was in Southwark Cathedral. Possibly to unconsciously ask forgiveness for the sin of ejaculating in a plastic beaker instead of cutting the middleman and doing it straight in a lady's vagina. Dear Lord, you left me no choice. It was either masturbate and be participant in the birth of humans via in vitro fertilization, or be some sort of incel terrorist because I'm not getting any matches on Tinder. Amen. As I randomly walked through this holy place, I saw this vibrant and colourful stained glass window, right, depicting several scenes from Shakespeare's plays. And above that, there was under that, there was a marble alabaster figure of the playwright. And as I looked at Shakespeare's window, I wondered if it was accidental, destiny, or if we see what we want to see. And because I've applied to study Shakespeare for a master's degree, Like, did I find this artwork because I called for it? Like, in scientific terms, right? I'm made of atoms, and so are you, and so is the rest of the universe. So could things come together simply by resonating at the necessary frequency? But in spiritual terms, right, faith is like Wi-Fi. It's invisible. You can't see it, but it has the power to connect you to what you need. So I'm in that journey at the moment where I'm trying to come to terms between science and spirituality and all of that. And Shakespeare's oeuvre, that always seemed too distant from what I thought capable of appreciating. Like, the language is so detached from modern day vernacular, like with its Elizabethan jargon and perplexing prose and gossips of witches that made any student question the syllabus. The complex themes are bewildering. Tales of revenge, lust for power, love so powerful that you could die, and other extremes in the human experience, like, which, as far as I could tell, only existed in stories lived by royals and fictional characters. It's only in hindsight that I realized these storylines of betrayal and conspiracies were being played out on every school playground. Like, time has afforded me many lessons, some very painful, which have opened my eyes to the reflections I now see in these plays. And it's given me an appetite to discover these characters that parallel our lives, despite the hundreds of years between us. I was recently at the Globe for a little inspiration, and I watched Richard III being executed masterfully. Oh my days, it was so good. If you get a chance to go see Richard III at the Globe, please do. I was standing in the yard for a close view of the action, and perhaps as a metaphor for my current status as a lowly peasant, uneducated about Shakespeare's works, a pleb, eager to learn, and forced to look up at what he could become, aspiring for a place on stage and maybe a theatrical throne. And I stood in this globe, and it's clear the audience are immediately humbled when stepping into this world-renowned theatre. Because it's not the original building, right? But the legacy permeates, not from the bricks or lumber or moss-covered roof, but by its contents, by the community, by the carefully constructed scripture that line the walls. The painted heavens on the stage's canopy counteract with the hell beneath the stage, where corpses are so often pushed through a trapdoor. The ceiling is it's a painted sun with a moon and signs of the zodiac over the actors, accentuating the theatre's motto: Totus mundus agit histrionem. Totus mundus agit histrionem. I can't speak Latin. All the world plays the player, as if all the characters are one's mind, one person's mind, attempting to understand something psychomachic. And then on one side of the stage, there's a depiction of a Roman god Apollo, and he's often seen with a lyre, like, the old guitar or whatever, and he's associated with the muses who inspire artistic creation. He's an oracular god in charge of truth and prophecy, healing and diseases, the sun and light itself. And on the other side, there's Mercury, a Roman god of commerce and communication and travel and other things. He's a messenger of the gods that represents the exchange of ideas and the power of language, essential for dramatic performance. The theatre is also known as the Wooden O, a nod to its almost round theatre constructed out of oak, and a reference to the play Henry V, when he says, but pardon, gentles all, the flat, unraised spirits that have dared on this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object. Can this cockpit hold the vastly fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very casques that did affright the air at Agincourt? Coincidentally, perhaps the O, a circle, in Sanskrit is a mandala, and I'll explore the mandala in later episodes. So I'm standing in this awe-inspiring theatre, subject to the elements, right? Like, there's rain pouring down, kicking out any faint-hearted tourist unable to handle the bipolar British weather. And I was bewitched by the performance. Like, Michelle Terry's interpretation of Richard III was mesmerizing. And it was made all the better with a perfectly timed crow that cawed overhead during an assassination, as if it too were in the company. And it's what every audience wants to feel and deserves, to be enraptured, enveloped in the careful arms of a professional storyteller. The spark to learn the craft had been ignited in me already, right? But watching her cast a spell on the audience fueled that fire in me. And it left no doubt in my mind that I wanted to transition from comedy clubs to the theatrical stage. I'm so grateful for this already fruitful career. Like, I've traveled the world performing stand-up comedy in 2 languages, actually 3. I did it in German once, to crowds of varying economic backgrounds and cultures and sizes. And I did a full hour show to 1 person in a grand hall, crowded tents sinking in the mud at music festivals. I did the Comedy Store on both sides of the world, a sold-out bilingual show at the prestigious L'Olympia in Paris with Eddie Izzard and Gad Elmaleh and many others. I'm so thankful that I've had so much stage time, but I'm astonished to feel as though all these hours, these years of performing were simply training for what could come next. I studied theatre arts at Middlesex University, which introduced me to the many aspects of producing a play, set design, light, sound, directing, writing, acting. And I subsequently studied clowning at Jacques Lecoq School in Paris. And then later I completed the improvisation course at the notorious UCB school in Los Angeles. Comedy has been my bread and butter for most of my professional life, whilst tragedy was, lurking backstage, slowly creeping in, befriending me, and then fucking stabbing me in the back. The fates have forced me to explore the tragic, and upon revisiting Shakespeare's works, I find myself capable, finally, of understanding the conflicts, the madness, the weight of a crown. But I still have much to learn. I've basically been a comedian my whole professional life, but yeah, things recently changed, and I wanted to be on the receiving end of comedy. I found it so difficult to laugh, and I needed something that could understand me. And it's got me thinking about the symbiotic relationship between a king and a fool in Shakespearean plays specifically. Right? According to the Oxford Dictionary, a fool is a person whose behavior suggests a lack of intelligence, common sense, or good judgment. A silly person, an idiot, a person who acts unwisely or imprudently on a particular occasion, usually predictive and often with dependent clause, as in, I was a fool to agree. It seems that nobody wants to be a fool. Another visit at the Globe Theatre for a presentation of Much Ado About Nothing clearly shows this when the audience cackled as Benedick expressed his frustration in Act 2, Scene 3 for being called the Prince's Jester, because the mere insinuation of being a clown is insulting. And it was a satisfactory Schadenfreude, right? German for harm joy, which is the act of laughing at someone else's misfortunes. They laughed because he was in pain from being insulted at being a jester. But the crowd loves the fool. They love a fool, but no one, it seems, wants to play that role. They are, however, a necessary ingredient for the survival of society. Send in the clowns, for they provide a voice for the common people within the court, and often they speak truth that others dare not express, for their seeming madness somehow permits them to bypass courtly decorum. Often brushed aside in the game of cards, right? The Joker in the pack is often symbolized as a court jester, with its Cuscombe and Marotte, grotesquely mimicking a king's crown and scepter. He stands on top of the world, sprinkling cards down to earth, implying that life is governed by randomness and our fates are not entirely within our control. It's one of the reasons why someone might say that they're playing the cards that they've been dealt, when acknowledging the challenges and misfortunes of their own life. The jester, standing on top of the world as if it were ruling it, demands humans to embrace its inherent absurdity if they are to soften the conflict of searching for meaning in a chaotic, supposedly indifferent universe. As Albert Camus once supposedly asked, should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? Confronting one's own conflict between choice and agency, accentuating the absurdity of existence by juxtaposing a profound existential decision, suicide, with a mundane everyday action, drinking coffee. By the way, that's wine in my cup. I'm recording this late at night, and I would be a fool to drink coffee late at night by myself. No. Alcohol is a better solution. Do not come to me for advice on addiction. Another way to rephrase what Albert said is from Hamlet, to be or not to be. That is the question. Now, unfortunately for the Prince of Denmark, he did not have a fool by his side to lighten the weight of his personal crown, but reflects on this necessity in Act 5, Scene 1, as he raises the skull of a former court jester. Alas, poor Yorick! I knew him, Horatio. A fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times, and now, how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed, I know not how oft. Where be your jibes now? Where be your gambols, your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar? This heartwarming memory draws attention to the transient nature of life, the universality of death, and the necessity of laughter. I'm a bit drunk, I'm stumbling on my words. The necessity of laughter, especially in dark times. In his first speech to the UK Parliament, King Charles III honours his late mother. He quotes Shakespeare, as he so often does, the Bard. As Shakespeare says of the earlier Queen Elizabeth, she was a pattern of all princes living. A pattern to all princes living. Words uttered by King Henry in Henry IV, Part 2, Act 4, Scene 4, highlighting the historical continuity and the heavy mantle of responsibility as a monarch. Because royalty represents order, right? It's constantly challenged by its subversion, chaos. One could say the clown, right? This duality, often personified as characters in stories, are two sides of the same coin. Wisdom and foolishness, reality and illusion, and the two must be embraced to attain balance. In King Lear, the fool often acts wiser than Lear, right? And seems to be the only one permitted to express insight, for he is trusted by the king. All thy other titles thou hast given away, that thou wast born with, says the fool in Act 1, Scene 4, shedding light on Lear, giving away his power and status as he divides his kingdom to his conspiratorial daughters. We're all trapped, right, to our subjective experience, but it often takes a very trusted person or a risk taker to reflect some harsh truths about what is actually going on. And tricksters usually apply. Ding, 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 ding. The relationship between duality and order, of order and chaos, king and fool, is clear, right, in the popular symbiotic and tragic relationship between Batman and the Joker. The Dark Knight is adamant to make a difference in the city of Gotham, to leave the world a better place. And in Batman the Killing Joke, written by Alan Moore, someone I got to work with, actually, in the movie The Show, written by the same man, the Joker highlights the futility of this struggle and their intertwined destinies. I'm not going to do it justice, but what he says is, why aren't you laughing? Because you know the joke's on you. You know the world is a black, awful joke, and I'm the only one who can see the funny side. And I'm here to show the cruel, pointless futility of existence. You and me, baby, we're an immovable object, an unstoppable force. We're destined to do this forever. Each defined by the existence of the other. The Joker sees their relationship as a never-ending battle. Batman wears a mask and a cape, much like a king adorns a crown and a mantle, shouldering a Sisyphean responsibility against a carousel of conquest, war, famine, and death. Despite this deep enmity and chaos between the dualities, there's a moment of shared understanding between them at the end of the comic, as they both laugh at the cyclical and unresolved nature of their conflict. On my international journey as a stand-up comedian, from early 2008 to the present day, I've been fortunate to learn many lessons on comedic performance and how to extract laughter from various audiences. Like in the early days of my career, I would parade on stage with my long limbs and act a buffoon for my own amusement, my own benefit, because the audience's energy would feed and heal me. The love I lacked in my younger years were being given to me by this mob of strangers. And that's something that only became clear to me in hindsight. It seems that they were there for me more than I was there for them, breeding dopamine in my depressed solitude. During the pandemic, the comedy clubs were closed, right? Which gave me time to contemplate on my role on the stage. Not just the ones that reside in theatres, but the one that we all share. You know, in Shakespearean terms, as Jacques famously says in Act 2, Scene 7 of As You Like It, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. And I was sat at this dingy dive bar in the United States, drinking some sorrows away and engaging in playful banter with the charming waitress. And next to me was this slumped man, quietly forlorn, with more wrinkles than I could count. And aware of my own loneliness, I invited him to join the conversation. And it was fun. We amused ourselves, but there was no guffaw, no eruption where the diaphragm just spasms involuntarily. And I didn't mind because, again, from my own egoic perspective, I wasn't on stage. I wasn't on duty. And so I didn't need to make anyone laugh. And then suddenly the waitress makes a remark that was so funny. Both me and the old man just burst into laughter. And I can't remember the joke. And I don't think it matters. Right? Because it was one of those jokes where you had to be there to understand. And the memory is significant because at that moment I saw the old man instinctively rise up, back straightening and frown disappearing so that I could finally see his eyes. With this huge grin on his face and a posture that now seemed light as if he shed some invisible anchor, he radiated with youthful energy, appearing 10, maybe 20 years younger. I genuinely thought that I had come across the fountain of youth. Laughter. In my experience, those with heavier crosses to carry develop a darker sense of humor to survive the trauma of their duty. And in order to best formulate jokes that can somehow make those people laugh, some comedians align with them to discover their knowledge. They walk in their shoes, so in their filth, the necessary joke can be found. Mythologist and writer Joseph Campbell, he's best known for his concept on the hero's journey, and he's attributed to saying, "Where you stumble and fall, there you will find gold," which emphasizes that the greatest rewards comes from confronting our deepest fears and obstacles. And if only one side of that duality explores this cave, then surely the other must also to achieve psychological wholeness. And therein lies the necessary relationship between a king and his fool. Comedy is not just a path that someone chooses to engage in, but is intrinsic to human nature and blossoms to balance the world of tragedy. Foolery, sir, does walk about the orb like the sun. It shines everywhere, says Feste the Clown in Act 2, Scene 4 of Twelfth Night. Foolishness is ubiquitous and unavoidable, much like the sun shines everywhere on earth. The king carries the weight of the crown, and so heavy is the head that wears the clown. I've applied to do a master's in Shakespeare studies, so hopefully I'll get accepted and also make enough money to pay for it. And my provisional idea for a dissertation is to explore the necessary villain societal demands, and personal reconciliation with malice. I think that would be quite titillating. This episode's work of art is the Joker card. There are many variations in the pack of cards, but it's the one I spoke about, sprinkling the cards at random on the earth. It's a piece of art that so often goes out of sight because it's just a random card that most people don't even need for the games they play. It's silently powerful. As RZA from Wu-Tang Clan said in the movie The Dead Don't Die, the world is perfect. Appreciate the detail. Appreciate the detail. That's some wisdom that I can't appreciate yet, but I'm slowly learning to. That little card just hidden in a pack has so much meaning. And that's today's piece of art. Thank you for listening. Don't hesitate to connect with me in the comments section below. Like, subscribe, share this podcast. It would really help me out to grow. And I'll speak with you in the next episode. I will attempt to answer the question that I so often get asked. How did you get amnesia? Hopefully I'll remember. Thank you.